So,
So I think great question, right? Like the very simple fundamental concept of scale comes in here, right? Like the more the marketplace is able to aggregate, whether it's Shakedeal or it's even a B2C marketplace for that matter, right? The supply chain efficiency comes in. And there are like two fundamental models, right? Like one is hub and spoke where you pick up and kind of deliver at multiple places, or it's a one-on-one shipment more on the B2B sides. As for both the models, the more scale you get, the overall supply chain gets crunched. The more it gets crunched, the higher the efficiency gets from there. So absolutely right, bang on there that if there is an aggregator which is able to aggregate more and more services, the supply chain is kind of shrinking and making the access of all the things, right? Like how fast the customer can get the products, the overall cost of shipments, all of the core fundamentals are kind of improving day by day. And it's like an efficiency improvement model. Like it is improving every single day. The more you get to scale, the faster it becomes. The more geography you expand, the better it becomes, and then so on.
Also on the retail side, actually, what also happens is what you call days of cover. How much stock you can hold on to, because your capital is always clogged up that way, right? And anything that you do to save that actually opens up to your days of cover. If you can bring down from 45 days to 30 days, you're just freeing up your working capital so much that it directly hits your bottom line, like what he was talking about. So that's another aspect.
Reading a little bit about your company, use something called the just-in-time inventory model. So how does that help, and how do you figure out exactly how much inventory to have? Do you use some kind of models, or do you use how do you do that?
so yeah, we use a JIT model for almost all kinds of fulfillment that we do with contracted clients. Basically, we're asset light kind of model. That way, we don't really hold many days of inventory at all. The way we are able to do this is firstly, we crunch the data. We crunch the data from companies, and that way what we're able to do is have a decent amount of information on what kind of safety stock levels are there, the min-max levels that's required. And then the way Shakedeal works is it kind of pushes a certain amount of, so we do the JIT bit to the customer, but then in our back end, we've got this entire base of vendors, right? So what we do is we push the vendor the stocking of the inventory to them, but we pass on this information regarding the models, the min-max levels, the stuff that safety stock that's required, and we give them visibility of that in their dashboards. So when they stock for us it's a GIT model, but at the same time they only stock as per the view that's visible to them. So they in turn take up VMI or vendor managed inventory on behalf of us, and then the client basically just needs to utilize us or plug Shakedeal into the ecosystem, and they keep getting a very seamless supply of auto replenishment with barely any stock on their books, because everything is just backed up. And with Shakedeal's data and the models that we have created, we're able to showcase to the vendors how much exactly they need. So they need not overstock for, say, this channel or the channel that they're working with Shakedeal for.
So one question that came, these models work.
Let me take a stab at that, right? So I think two parts to your question. One is around automation. I think no question, right? Like the more inefficiencies you are able to remove in the entire process, right? Like from the customer thinking to item being shipped to their premises, right? The more inefficiencies you can remove, the better your economics and the overall business is going to be, efficiency of the business. So no question on that. And I think the only way to remove inefficiencies is like automating the entire workflow. And it's a highly repeatable model, right? There is no science per se how a known item would get shipped to a known customer. So it's like, and folks have done it. Like if you look at Amazon warehouses, right, how they are picking stuff, it's all robot driven largely. And finally, going to the door of the customer, like really automated, no decisions to be taken by any human because they would unnecessarily delay the process. So that's one part of the question. The other part is how do these models work? I think that's still very specific to the industry you're operating. Like if you go to B2C, just in time is not going to work, right? You need selection. You need a massive selection. That's when customer is going to make a choice. Whereas like in a scenario like Shakedeal, it does work. So it would be very, you can say, dependent on the vertical you're on and the kind of customers you have, right? But what's paramount is whether you do just in time or you do like 7-day inventory, whatever you do, your value is going to be driven by how quickly you rotate your inventory, right? Even in just in time, you will have to be cognizant of that, your selection, how fast it is rotating. And I'll maybe just give an example, right? Like two very large retail companies in India. One is DMart, like it's a very, very power stock, right? P 170 and it's still going up. On the other side is a Metro cash and carry, right? A big difference, right? Like both of them are large businesses. Metro Cash and Carry does like 8,000 crores. DMart probably is at 40,000 crores now. Even at that scale, DMart is able to rotate the complete inventory of the, I think, 200 plus stores they have in 9 days. Metro Cash and Carry takes 27 days. That is what defines the profits that DMart make. That is what defines the overall revenue and the overall throughput of the company that it can produce. And it's a investor love company, right? That's what finally they get on the public markets.
Yeah, very well said, Abhinav. I think one of the things is everything cannot be automated, that's for sure. I mean, you have aberrations from what's been the norm or how historical data is crunched. But your models need to be smart enough to take into take into account various other soft points that can create a difference in the demand or the kind of SKU assortment that you might need. In VMI, especially when you are dealing with maintenance, repair, and operations kind of items, there's a pattern to it. So even if you plug it into any kind of AI model, it's going to be able to tell you that this is how often it's happening in the past, and say a season comes in, it's very. But then when COVID hit, the aberration was so high that the items that were usually needed, the requests were all coming for other kinds of items. So if today I had to like go into a company and take that historical data and put it into my model and then say that this is what your history or your future procurement is going to be, it's not going to be the same. उनके पास अभी भी stock में इतने सारे 50 oxygen concentrator पड़े. What will they do with that? I mean, in the future, I can't plan for that because there's no need. So it has to be your model and your everything that you run through your AI model or whatever you want to like make into a predictive, demand and forecasting model. It needs to be run through a sieve, and there has to be a human element looked into it. And at the same time, like he was talking about another example, Asian Paints rotates much faster its inventory compared to like guys like Nerolac or the other ones, Berger Paints and all of that. And one of the reasons they've been able to do it is they were one of the first people out there to have actually invested in a supercomputer, which was able to actually track the demand at each of their dealers. So they literally know they with such accuracy that at 3 p.m. in Kormangla in this block, ये वाला पेन डीलर को क्या demand होगा. They know with that kind of accuracy, and that's happened because of them being able to be so proactive, and that's why they turn so fast. And it alludes to the same fact that Abhinav made, that turning fast is actually a very important thing in supply chain, because that's how you create your, what's your overall ROCE or ROE. Is basically the kind of gross margin that you make on this buy-sell spread times the number of turns that you do. So the number of turns in DMart, one thing is there, they have a lesser gross margin, but because they're turning so fast, after multiplying, it takes it way ahead of Metro. And that's why Metro is probably in a place where they might be selling out and exiting India. So those are just a few pointers from my side.
So basically,
You can even innovate on the business side. Most of them have gone into the consignment model so that they don't have to take inventory on their books at all, right? And so there is some innovation, but again, when you hold inventory, still your godowns are still blocked. What do? Again, godown is a real estate investment, right? So you really have to move it fast enough. That's the fundamental there.
Just one point to add to that, like one is the whole tech side of automating and kind of predicting. But there's one very important point, right? I think that we just missed, that the brand also has to be paramount, right? Like DMart stands for something, Asian Paint stands for something. So the pull exists in the market, right? Like, so if you really position your brand as a, you can say, category leading, category defining product, then it becomes much easier for the other financial folks in the company to automate and do all of this. So I think it starts with brand pull. If brand pull exists, you can do all of this. If it doesn't, all of this is not going to get you anywhere.
okay. So like so supply chain focus on the
I think that's about the Zeptos and the Blinkits of the world.
I can take it from that angle. So one of the things I feel, Mayank, is see when we talk about customer experience, what we look at is service level adherence. So when you have certain amount of POs coming in for supply of certain goods, you want to have it fulfilled within a certain TAT. And that usually happens to be like 5 to 6 business days, right? In our space, it's not instantaneous like Zepto or Blinkit right now. But the items that we have are also not like, run of the mill items. They're like, sometimes they're like spares of this, and you need to be able to procure it. And also the plants are not always located in tier 1 or tier 2 kind of locations. You'll see that, Orissa is literally now the aluminum capital of the world. In Orissa, there's a place called Jharsuguda, where Vedanta has got their aluminum plant. They churn out, so they have the biggest aluminum smelter plant in the entire world. And that is not a tier 1 location at all, right? So wahan pe also pahunchne ke liye there has to be a certain amount of service level. And like in the start, Himanshu was mentioning that acquiring the customer is one thing, but then keeping the customer and ensuring that you're able to deliver is another thing. For me, this is one metric for being able to provide him service on time, getting him. I can't have delays because yahan pe to LDs and all kinds of liquidation damages they charge in case you're away from the stipulated service level. But what's happened is, because of the way we've been able to manage our supply chain and being able to create the service, existing customers customers of our peers in the market, when they've given us a chance because our salespeople have been that way phenomenal. They've given us a chance, and then they've realized what they were missing. out on because of the service level that we uphold. So we mention that service level, and then we take care of the plants there where we are also taking care of, VMI. So we do VMI on their behalf, but then like I've explained before, how we actually push it further down onto the vendor and do the consignment basis. वहाँ पे on time in full करके एक OTIF level है. So that is a big metric that we track, and उसके लिए so even our bonuses and with the customers are kind of aligned with that. So that's one thing. And then just about customer experience. So there's always a trade-off in value that you're trying to like provide at what price. The reason I'm talking about this is because there are customers who we can provide it within a day, but there is no need to, right? For example, a Syngene that's there right here in Jigni, that kind of shipment can happen daily. There can be a milk run there, but these are not the kind of SKUs that you want a milk run going out for them. So you kind of moderate it, because then you can batch shipments rather than sending it out there. Now, their unit economics comes into play, and then you're able to make positive unit economics. But when you have to do those kind of shipments, like for example, a Zepto or a Blinkit, they're doing, I know they work on a model of hyperdensity and try to create as much demand from a particular dark store and then make that into a unit economic positive kind of delivery system. But I don't think they're there yet. It's not making money on a per delivery system. But Big Basket, on the other hand, without entering this space, was making the traditional milk run is that. Subah doodh aata hai. So that's the thing. That always made sense. So it's again a trade-off between what the customer wants and what kind of value or price he's willing to pay for it.
And I think very fair point, right? And that's what we used to say in our company as well earlier, right? That innovation is a double-edged sword. It's going to bite you back as well, right? Like Big Basket was like city by city becoming profitable, and now suddenly two innovators per se come and kind of disrupt the model. And you're seeing a large-scale migration. Like almost, I don't remember the numbers. I was chatting with the MyGate founder one day, but they've been noticing, right? Like same customers who were loyal, getting Big Basket deliveries once in 3 days, are all like getting daily deliveries with Zeptos now. So I think innovation is a double-edged sword, and it can actually do more damage also at times.
Yeah. Okay. So talking about Himanshu, you
Yeah, I mean, let's look a little bit back. If you look into early 2000s, it was sell and forget model. Most brands like Page Diya. Now you figure out what happens with the service, right? Service centers, or within the companies also, service centers were cost, or service department was a cost center. So it was always looked down upon, right? Kharcha karwa rahe ye log, right? So service was not a core part of their corporate manifesto at all. Then come a little bit towards 2005 to 2015 period, where, okay, I will sell to you. I'll remember till you are in warranty. After warranty, I'll forget you type of a model happened. All right. There, आज customer हो, कल तुम गए तो warranty गया तो I'll forget you, because then if you look at home appliances, 5-year, 10-year compressor warranties or those kinds of things are fairly common. So that kind of stuff started happening. And then around 2015, 16, 17, a lot of people started realizing that a customer is for life. A customer is not for a transaction necessarily, because then repeat purchases happen. And then people like us started coming into picture, that where you buy one device today, but you're going to buy from other OEMs so many devices. The customer is still with us. And as long as you keep providing good experience, then the customer will keep coming back, because all of us have experienced poor product purchase or service experience, all kinds of stuff we have all gone through. And wherever we find it a great experience, we tend to come back to that. And that's where, again, it just makes good business sense to invest into customer centricity. That becomes one part of it. But then the other part of it, when you layer that customer experience with the ecosystem play, because now your ecosystem also starts getting better. Whether they work with you or they work without you, then the customer starts getting benefit out of it, because everybody starts realizing that, hey, I need to actually push the envelope a little bit more. Otherwise, I'm going to lose more customers. Because one ecosystem versus another ecosystem or other plays are always happening around the corner. So that's how the industry has been. And customers have also become a lot more vocal with Twitters of the world and everything else coming around, right? So it has started, companies have started taking way more seriously, and it's all good for the consumer perspective.
And how do you think
I'm sure. No, I'm sure. In every B2B customer also wants to be treated like they're an Amazon customer nowadays. And when you talk about customer, this thing, Amazon is the company that you really cannot defeat, because they hold the customer literally. So I don't know if but this is something I heard. When Bezos used to have his conference rooms and meetings and all that, he never sat at the chairman's table. Like, that is empty because that's the customer. So it's like that. That's the thinking. That's what's ingrained in their heads. So the customer centricity is going to be key. And like he mentioned, customer is not for one transaction. I mean, going forward, any business, in order to be sustainable, can and has to ensure that the customer keeps seeing value from you. And only then, you can kind of amortize your CAC over the useful life, which then gets extended over a period of time. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, no, I think totally agree. I think Amazon has set the gold standard, which I think most of the folks are following now, and I think customer wins at the end of it. Yeah.
Do you think it's lagging behind in terms of the automation and technology, or is it better? Or yeah.
No, I think that's a great question. I think very interesting. I think will be good to get perspective from two of you as well. I think in my experience, it depends about which part of the supply chain you're talking about. A good chunk of B2B is at times more automated than B2C. And I think of course, on the customer side of B2C, it's as glamorous as it can get. I think it's very subjective, and depending on the end customer and the part of the supply chain, also heavily dependent on where you are procuring from, right? Like if items are coming from a warehouse or a dark store, the kind of automation they're going to follow is going to be very different, whether it's B2B or it's B2C. If they're coming from a, say, local seller on Amazon, which is sitting in some tier 2, tier 3 town of India, they are not going to be as automated as you think on the other side it would be. So I think it's a mix of where it originates and which part of supply chain you specifically focus on.
And in our kind of world where we operate, B2C is almost impossible in certain ways. So for example, if we work with Samsung, I directly have access to Samsung activation systems. No one else has access to that. I directly have access to OnePlus activation systems or HPs or you name a customer. I directly have access to the most authentic data that no one else has access to. So they already are a lot behind right now with us, right? I know when the device was sold. I know when the device was activated. I know how many times you charged, whether you use the right charger or you used a duplicate charger. Also, some manufacturers actually give me that level of detail. How many times your phone has been charged, what levels it has been charged. We have all kinds of data available to us. Not everyone has that kind of data available. So that's when we believe, at least our side of the business, I don't think in B2C that's practically possible purely because of our OEM play.
So thank you guys.
I would like to
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Guys, legal 101 for starters will start at 4:30.
बात किया
Hello, 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 hello.
जतन एक बार चेक इफ ये लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग इज ऑन और नॉट. अगर ऑन है तो व्हाट्सएप में, ठीक है, और नहीं है तो फिर देखो क्या इशू है. Hi, ma'am. We are just waiting for the speaker to join in.
Sure, sure.
So the flow would be, I would start introducing the speaker and you, ma'am, and then, yeah, it's up to you. I will open the floor for you and you can take as you wish. Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Gaurav.
Hi, Deepthi.
Hello, sir.
Hi. Is your background real? It's beautiful, whatever that background is.
It's on campus, shot on campus.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Yes, sir. So I think we should start. I'll introduce both of you. So yeah, greetings everyone to both the panelists and as well as all the students who have joined from the classroom and the classroom coordinators. IIM Bangalore welcomes you to the day 2 of its Entrepreneurship Fest, Eximius, to promote a spirit of entrepreneurship in the country. This year, Eximius goes with the theme Start, Scale, and Sail. To elaborate a little bit more, it tries to explore the whole entrepreneurial journey of first starting with a raw product idea, experimenting and brainstorming about it, taking advice from the right people, and then starting off a dream in the process. Next step, scaling brings in new challenges. Yesterday, we heard about serial entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, startups evolving our health and data. And today we also had VCs talking about scaling up as well. To tell us a little bit more about scaling up and how to build a unicorn, we have with us Mr. Gaurav Agarwal. So a little bit of background about him. Gaurav Agarwal is the co-founder of Tata 1mg, India's largest digital health platform. At Tata 1mg, Gaurav leads the e-commerce business and also the company's overall product and technology strategy. He strongly believes in the role of technology in simplifying a user's healthcare needs and journey. Under his leadership, Tata 1mg has developed and deployed market-leading technological advancements and customer-centric products year on year, including many in artificial intelligence and machine learning. Gaurav was born and brought up in Kanpur. He's a computer science graduate from IIT Delhi. Prior to Tata 1mg, Gaurav spent over a decade in the Silicon Valley, where his last role was general manager for Zynga's most successful online game, which is Farmville. Today we have Professor Deepthi Ganpati as the moderator for this session. Professor Deepthi Ganpati currently teaches managerial communication and is the chair of the managerial communication department in IIM Bangalore. She also conducts executive education programs on social media for governance and digital media for organizational communications for senior executives. She has previously taught at IIM Bangalore and School of Business Management at Nasi Munchi. She holds a PhD from the Department of Communication and Journalism, University of Mysore, and she is a fellow of the Rotary Group Study Exchange. And she has been a CNN Young Journalist finalist, creative writing awardee by Royal Commonwealth Society London, and is recognized by the International Journalist Network as Journalist of the Month. So with this introduction, I think Professor Deepthi is one of the best professors that we have on campus to actually lead and moderate this session. And I would actually urge her to take up the floor and start the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Wonderful lineup of speakers we've been having, Gaurav, the last 2 days at the Eximius event. And students as well as our audience are really looking forward to your discussion. They're really excited, about this conversation. So I'm going to dive in straight to my questions. We'll keep this very conversational, Gaurav. We'll have our conversations for around 35 minutes. And then we'll open it up to questions. Is that fine with you?
Absolutely.
All right. So, Gaurav, starting off, before we get into the aspects of scaling, because that's what this session is all about, I want, through these questions and through these conversations, I want our audience to get a sense of the scale and the magnitude of the problem itself that you sought to address through this startup. And so therefore, my first question to you is, why does healthcare resonate with these words, which is affordable and accessible? And so what has been your sense of healthcare being affordable and accessible, not only in India, but across geographical locations?
That's a great question. First of all, I would just like to thank IIM Bangalore for having me. It's a great privilege to be able to come here and talk about, 1mg, what we've done, and, hopefully some of what we've done, some of what our beliefs are, some of what I say maybe will inspire more amongst us to go solve India's problems and maybe the world's problems as well. So thanks again a lot. And the question, when I saw the question, I thought it was very interesting, because when 1mg started and we were struggling with how to create this small, short, vision statement, we unfortunately failed, and 1MG's vision statement, which has stuck with us over the last 8 years, is to make healthcare understandable, affordable, and accessible, right? And we've always believed deep down that for a person to actually get better, the person first and foremost needs to understand their healthcare choices, right? What's going on with my body? What are the right, options available to me? Who's the right doctor, et cetera, et cetera. And from there on, they need to be able to get quality care at the right price, right? And so we created this affordable, accessible statement only to find, over 1MG's journey that, affordability and accessibility is actually a really, really important part of healthcare. And in my belief, right, I strongly believe that the reason it's such an important part is because health, sort of a need today. It's no longer as we are living longer, and people are starting to talk about not lifespans but healthy lifespans, and how do you work longer, live better, get everything from life better. It's just so important. Healthcare becomes such an important aspect in the current context. And unfortunately, regardless of which country you go to, you can go to the West, you can come to the East. The two aspects of healthcare that are broken everywhere are affordability and accessibility in just very, very different and unique ways, right? And I'll give you an example. I spent over a decade in the Bay Area, and I used to joke to my friends that if you're dying in the US, they will save you, right? You will get like VIP red carpet treatment into an ER center. They will patch you up. They will throw the best treatments available. But if you're not dying, then they'll wait for you to get to that point where you're dying, and then you will get care possible, right? All the care possible. And India is the opposite, right? Where our outpatient systems, etc., are reasonably okay. You can walk into any doctor's clinic. By and large, let's say a doctor's fee is okay. But when it comes to, let's say, emergency care, etc., we have a long way to go. So we truly believe that affordability and accessibility is a really important problem to solve for healthcare. And India suffers from it in very, very unique and challenging ways because of the way our ecosystem's set up.
Yeah, very interesting, to think of you crafting that vision statement and then it becoming an actionable part of, your entire mechanism in the way you thought of delivering it. And, it's so true that health is such an indicator of, important indicator of the population in any country. I mean, you talk about human capital index, and then you talk about the quality, like you said, the quality of lifestyle and how that impacts developed countries. And increasingly the focus is on health. I mean, and never a better time to be in this sector because, of the implications that it has, especially with climate change and the effects of climate change on the healthcare sector.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so in terms of looking at, the reasons for this being, not affordable or not accessible, again, we'll come back to that question of scaling up, right? Is it a dearth of healthcare professionals or the systems, or is it mismanagement? So what did you perceive to be a problem here?
So one lesson that I've learned, in my journey, in my career journey over the years, is that when things are broken, they're usually not broken, for one reason. They're broken for many different reasons. And then when they work, they typically work for, exactly one reason, right? And it's typically, I've read the study a lot in the context of, let's say, great employers, etc., right? Great employers all exhibit autonomy, ownership, etc. But then when it's broken in many different ways. And I think that, sorry for the detour, but I think that it's the same is true for healthcare, right? And if you look at the Indian healthcare context, most healthcare actually has three core pillars. One is the payer, who's actually sort of creating a balance between the provider and the patient. The second is the patient, and the third is the provider. In India, what happens is that the legs are not equally sort of on equal footing, right? The payer leg is very, very weak. India has one of the lowest insurance penetrations for an economy and for an economy of our development stage. It has one of the lowest insurance penetrations in the world. We actually don't cover outpatient insurance for the most part, which means on a day-to-day basis to get better, to seek a doctor, there's a lot of out-of-pocket pay, which consumers don't pay for. And as a result, naturally care doesn't become affordable or accessible to you. So that's one big challenge. If you look at, let's say, what Obama did with trying to bring in universal health insurance, etc., or what UK and Europe have done, then that whole aspect is completely missing in our country. If you look at government spend on, let's say, healthcare, it's one of the lowest in the world. Again, for an economy of our size, US spends maybe 15-20%. We are barely hitting 5% in public-private spends combined, if I'm not wrong, in the Indian ecosystem. Right now, also look at for the size, Indian healthcare is reasonably large. It's like 60, 100, $120 billion industry. But if you look at the fragmentation of that industry, it's appalling. India has over 1 million pharmacies, one of the highest pharmacy ratio in the world. All our pharmacies are actually small format, 200 square feet, 300 square feet, 3,000 SKUs, mom and pop sort of stores. And this is true actually not just for pharmacies, but our diagnostic labs, our hospitals, nursing homes, etc. Across the board, we run a subscale, fragmented, non-digitized, non-efficient, economies of scale healthcare ecosystem. And all of these things combined actually lead to quality of care being non-standardized and poor, affordability being, suboptimal because consumers don't know whether the same sort of quality of care is coming in, etc. They have no way, and there's a lot that has changed, right? Like when you want to go to a doctor, you don't know who's a good doctor because there's no system in place to actually give you that possibility, right? We are still, in this day and age, we are still talking about authentic medicines in our country because our supply chain is non-digital, right? So there's many different reasons, but I think the biggest one is probably the lack of a strong payer network, which actually cannot create a balance between the patient and the provider, lack of digitization, fragmentation, and subscale infrastructure.
Also, Gaurav, if we look at the system of, reaching out to this large population,